It often starts with relief. Someone explains something clearly. They say what's going on. They tell you who is right and who is wrong. Suddenly, the noise quiets down. You don't have to sort it out yourself anymore. Your mind relaxes. The confusion lifts. The question feels answered. You didn't feel lost because you were lazy. You felt lost because there were too many pieces, too many voices, too many possibilities. Being told what to think brings order. It gives you a place to stand, a position, a sentence you can repeat without worrying if you missed something. You notice how good that feels. You stop searching, you stop doubting, you stop holding everything open in your head. Someone else already did the work. It doesn't feel like giving something up. It feels like being helped. You can move on with your day. You can talk about the topic without hesitation. You can feel certain, even if just for a while. That certainty feels calm. Thinking on your own can feel heavy. You have to hold different sides at once. You have to sit with not knowing. You have to admit when things don't fit neatly. Being told what to think removes that weight. It gives you a ready-made shape for your thoughts. You don't have to test it. You don't have to question it. You can just carry it. Most of the time, you don't even notice this happening. It feels normal. It feels efficient. You might say you're just agreeing, or trusting someone who knows more, or following common sense. But what you really notice is the relief. The tension in your mind eases. The pressure to decide disappears. You don't feel controlled. You feel settled. And once you've felt that calm, it's hard not to want it again. Uncertainty starts to feel uncomfortable. Open questions feel unfinished. Silence feels like a problem that needs fixing. So when someone offers clear answers, you listen closely, not because you can't think, but because letting someone else think for you feels easier to live with. And sometimes, that ease is hard to refuse. Carl Jung paid close attention to moments when people hand something over inside themselves. Not loudly, quietly. Being told what to think can feel like a relief because it lowers inner conflict. Jung would notice how uncertainty creates tension inside the mind. Different thoughts pull in different directions. Nothing settles. That tension is uncomfortable. When someone offers a clear answer, the tension drops. The inner noise softens. Jung would say the psyche welcomes that calm. This isn't about intelligence, it's about balance. Jung saw how people try to keep a stable picture of themselves. Doubt threatens that picture. It opens questions about values, beliefs, and identity. Those questions don't always feel safe. So the mind looks for something solid to hold on to. Being told what to think provides that. It offers structure from the outside. The mind doesn't have to wrestle with its own contradictions anymore. Jung would say this is how people avoid meeting parts of themselves they don't want to face. Uncertainty can expose fear. It can expose insecurity. It can expose the limits of what you know. Those are uncomfortable places to sit. So the psyche steps aside. It accepts the borrowed answer, the borrowed belief, the borrowed conclusion. Nothing feels dishonest. It feels stabilizing. Jung would notice how quickly people defend the ideas they didn't create themselves. Once an idea calms inner tension, it becomes protected. Questioning it would mean reopening the conflict, so the mind resists that. It prefers peace over friction. This is how habits form. The more often certainty comes from outside, the less often the mind practices holding uncertainty on its own. Over time, not being told what to think starts to feel unsettling. Silence feels empty. Open questions feel threatening. Jung wouldn't judge this. He would recognize it as a natural response to inner strain. The psyche wants coherence. It wants to feel whole. And when thinking for yourself feels like fragmentation, letting someone else do the thinking feels like healing. That's the quiet trade being made. Not freedom for control, but tension for calm. And for many people, that feels like a fair exchange. Friedrich Nietzsche watched how certainty becomes attractive, not because it is true, but because it feels strong. Being told what to think doesn't just calm the mind, it gives it direction. Nietzsche would notice how quickly borrowed ideas turn into personal identity. Once someone accepts a ready-made view, they don't just hold an opinion, they become someone who holds it. That feels powerful. Nietzsche was interested in how people avoid the effort of creating meaning for themselves. Thinking on your own requires risk. You might be wrong. You might change your mind. You might stand alone for a while. That's uncomfortable. When someone else provides the answers, that risk disappears. The meaning arrives already shaped. You don't have to struggle with it. Nietzsche would notice how moral language appears here. The borrowed view isn't just convenient, it becomes right, it becomes obvious. It becomes something that doesn't need explaining. Once that happens, questioning it feels unnecessary, even suspicious. Nietzsche would say this is how certainty protects itself. It turns agreement into virtue. The more confident the voice telling you what to think, the easier it is to follow. Confidence feels like truth. Certainty feels like strength. Over time, repeating these ideas feels natural. They stop feeling borrowed. They feel like your own thoughts. Nietzsche would point out that this is not submission. It's comfort wearing the shape of conviction. The mind enjoys not having to justify itself constantly. It enjoys standing on something firm. Being told what to think gives that firmness without the work of building it. That's why disagreement can feel threatening. It doesn't just challenge an idea, it threatens the sense of strength that came with it. Nietzsche would say people often defend borrowed beliefs more fiercely than personal ones. Letting go would mean facing uncertainty again, and uncertainty feels like weakness. So the certainty stays, the voice stays, the structure stays. Not because people are fooled, but because certainty feels better than doubt, and strength feels better than hesitation. That's the story that keeps being told, and the mind listens. Niccolo Machiavelli would not start by asking whether people should think for themselves. He would ask what happens when they don't. Being told what to think makes systems run smoothly. When many people share the same view, decisions move faster, conflict lowers, resistance becomes rare. That efficiency matters. Machiavelli would notice how clear instructions reduce uncertainty. People know where to stand. They know what is expected. They know which ideas are safe to repeat. That predictability is valuable. When people think on their own, outcomes become harder to control. Questions spread. Doubt slows things down. Discussions branch in too many directions. Being told what to think solves that. Machiavelli would observe that power does not need everyone to agree freely. It only needs them to align. Clear narratives create that alignment. They give people language. They give them reasons. They give them a sense of order. Once those narratives are accepted, they start doing the work themselves. People repeat them without being asked. They correct others. They defend the structure. This is efficient. Machiavelli would not describe this as deception. He would describe it as management. People who feel guided feel calmer. Calm people are easier to organize. They follow patterns already set. Being told what to think also removes responsibility. If the conclusion came from elsewhere, the burden of judgment feels lighter. People feel less exposed. That makes the arrangement attractive. Machiavelli would notice that systems reward this behavior. Those who repeat the shared view are trusted more, included more, promoted more. Those who question it slow things down. They introduce uncertainty. They become inconvenient. Over time, people learn what works. They learn that agreement brings safety, that clarity brings belonging, that thinking alone brings risk. So the habit spreads, not through force, but through results. And once being told what to think proves useful, it doesn't need to be enforced. It's chosen, again and again, because it keeps things running. Napoleon Hill paid attention to belief as a source of strength. Not belief as proof, but belief as something that helps people move forward without hesitation. Being told what to think often comes with belief already built in. The idea arrives confident, complete. It doesn't ask you to sit with doubt. It offers direction right away. Il would notice how good that feels. Belief removes friction. When you believe something strongly, you stop hesitating. You stop questioning every step. Action feels easier. Being told what to think gives you that belief without effort. You don't have to test it slowly. You don't have to sit with uncertainty while it forms. It's already there. Il understood how much people need that sense of certainty. It gives energy. It gives focus. It turns confusion into momentum. When you believe the answer you've been given, you feel capable. You feel aligned. You feel like you know where you're going. That feeling is comforting. Thinking for yourself often means pausing, doubting, reconsidering, changing your mind. Il knew how tiring that can be. Belief, especially borrowed belief, feels lighter. It lets you move forward without stopping to check the ground beneath you. Il would not rush to criticize this. He would notice how useful it is for staying motivated, for staying confident, for staying steady. Belief fills the gaps where knowledge feels thin. It smooths over uncertainty. It tells you that the path you're on makes sense. Being told what to think often comes wrapped in that reassurance. You don't feel lost. You feel guided. Over time, the habit becomes familiar. Belief starts to feel like safety. Doubt starts to feel like danger. Letting go of the borrowed certainty would mean standing alone again, thinking slowly, carrying questions without answers. That feels heavy. So the belief stays, the guidance stays, the comfort stays. Not because people can't think, but because believing feels easier than wondering, and certainty feels kinder than silence. Most of the time, we already know this. We just don't like hearing it said.